So accessing capital through the Nigerian Stock Exchange. I had initially mentioned the ASM board for our SME. So from the CEO's speech, he mentioned, and the president also mentioned our engagements with the association when we were starting up and discussing about the growth board. And this came on board because we realized that, the SME guys are not tapping the opportunities in the capital market. And from feedback from a lot of these SMEs and startups, because we had a couple of them in the room when we wrote the rules and when we were at the idea stage for this growth board, they gave us feedback on the deterring factors why they refused to come and list. And so we sat with them and we took some notes, and then we decided to come up with a growth board, simply because we thought it was important to have a board that speaks to the specific business cycle for each business, basically. So the ASM board is a board where you have your very small company, say valued at 50 million, and then you have a Omoluabi, I don't know if you would know Omoluabi, or Rack Unity, or Magnicos, they do the sugar. And then there's a disparity. And then we decided to split the board so that it answers specific investor questions. So we came up with a growth board, and I would explain further. But what the growth board is trying to do, or is going to achieve, is it would provide easier capital flow and reduce cost of funding. I can imagine how much it is. I don't even want to believe anybody can get anything cheaper than 20% with the banks now, even with the reduced MPR. So we plan to reduce cost of funding, by accessing the capital market via the growth board. Restructure market segments to better meet needs along companies' entire life cycle, and I would explain that on the other slide. To deepen the capital market and provide liquidity for the companies listed on the growth board, and also to create a robust pipeline for our investors and potential issuers to network on the platform. I'll quickly go through the structure of the growth board. Okay, so the growth board is split into two. The growth board would have the entry, and maybe to also explain that we plan to launch this growth board in June. The growth board is split into two. It would cater to micro, small startups, and we've decided to split them into two different segments. The entry segment would have the macros, like I've said, and then the standard segment would have your medium to large companies, venture type firms, that's companies that have already gotten VC investments in them. And then we also decided to create a private market, because from conversations with the association and other startup companies, we discovered that a lot of our companies, yes, they like the idea of coming to raise capital or being listed or being the next Facebook, but they're just not at the stage where they can come and comply with all the rigors of being a listed entity, the disclosures involved and the financial burdens involved. And so we decided to create, if you'd like to call it, a networking platform that provides visibility for these companies that have grown to a certain level, where we match investor, and this is not new, because I guess, there are various places, or the Elite, for example, on the London Stock Exchange, that provides this service also. But we decided to do this for our companies in Nigeria, where there is a match between the investor and the company. So it really gives you a platform for a beauty parade, really, where rather than have one investor come from Silicon Valley, drops $100,000 in front of you because you're so desperate, you sell off 60% of your business just for 100. And we've had conversations with big oil and gas companies that have told us, Morayo, I sold myself short. I should have just come to the market. If Seplat could raise over $500 million in this market, maybe I should have been patient enough to come to this market and raise that amount, because we do the same thing. And we know this is what is happening in Yaba. They come in, drop 100,000, you sell it's like selling your soul to the devil. And then 2 years after, you're like, how do I get my company back, really? So this platform provides that avenue for having a diverse pool of investors, strategic investors, intelligent investors that understand your business, and that's what they're looking for. So it's not just one person. We would also speak to the investors so that they're comfortable with the companies that they would be matching with. But the idea is for the investors to have a pool of companies to review and then be comfortable to pick the various ones that they're willing to invest in. For our premium, but I'll glance through the boards we have. So we have the premium board for the big boys, the big companies, over 200 billion naira in valuation. On that board, we have Dangote, Access Bank, as you would assume, Lafarge, UBA, and the like, Seplat. Then we have our main board where we have the bulk of our listed companies on. And then we would introduce the broad board. And just to clarify or just to emphasize the difference between the boards, obviously for you to be listed on the exchange, you have to be a PLC. Market capitalization for our premium board, I already said 200 billion. For the main board, it's 4 billion. For our growth board, because I said we split it into two, for the entry level, we are looking at the valuation of a company from 50 million naira to 500 million naira for the entry space. So that really takes into consideration your startups, really. And then for your standard board, obviously, because some of them would have gotten investments in, we're considering, or we have decided to go with 500 million to 4 billion naira. That's the valuation of the company. For the free float, which is the percentage that is in the market to be traded of your shares. For our premium board, obviously it's 20%, main board 20%. For the growth board, we are considering 10% and 15%. And we've also limited the number of shareholders required for the growth board to 25. So I've been speaking about listing on the exchange, but let me just, at least explain the benefits. So it's not just speaking English and not showing you why you should list. Aside from the fact that you become a Dangote in a couple of years after listing, because of course you would have access to capital to expand and be the number one brand in Nigeria. It provides business continuity for the founders of the business. Now, this is broadly speaking. So we speak to a lot of founders of businesses in Nigeria where they typically tell you, I don't want to mention names, but they tell you, oh, my kids are not even involved in my business. So who's going to carry on after I'm gone? So for people like that, we obviously pitch a listing to them because it ensures that your business lives beyond you. Provides valuation and potentially enhances liquidity by tapping new investors, which was what I was talking about. It helps with your valuation because there's price discovery, obviously, when you're listed on the exchange. Recognition in global and international markets. I spoke about the market being a global market. It also helps with visibility. So you can imagine being listed on the exchange, small fintech company in a Yaba or in VI, and then you're being reported on the daily official list of the exchange, and then everybody all over the world understands your story, because on this platform it also provides visibility for you as a brand. Transparency and credibility, I mentioned that earlier, and it's also a fantastic exit strategy for your private investors, which is key for your space, because we see that this is where they really play in the fintech space and the healthcare space. Sorry, I'm bringing in the healthcare, but we have a lot of private equity transactions that go on in the healthcare space also. So just a few stats just to show you the depth of our market. As at September last year, we had new listings, a total value of about 1.4 trillion equity listings. The new equity listings, actually, we had $946 million. This obviously comprises of rights and other equity core investments coming in. That's a special placing. For corporate entities, they raised over 11 billion last year alone. We've had a couple of capital raise this year, but we decided to limit our stats to last year. So for some, we decided to just show you some transactions from last year. So out of that over 11 billion that I spoke about, over 900 and something million that I spoke about, we decided to give you a few of companies that came to the market, tapped the market last year. And you can see we also decided to put it in dollar terms. So you understand that that's $100 million that they are bringing to you. You can easily, get that if you come to the market here. The market is deep enough. And then we decided to show you some of your colleagues that are also touring that part of a possible listing this year or next year, or that we are actively engaging to list on the exchange. After all the talk, would like to just tell you steps if you're deciding. And like I said earlier, for a lot of us, it's still early stages. So we don't expect that, after today we would get people jumping up and saying, oh, I want to list tomorrow. But at least just to understand the dynamics of the market and what it provides for you in the event that you really want to then come and tap the market. So just to show you, we expect that you have financial advisors that would look into your books and actually also the fact that you want to be public and you want to come and raise capital. Then you give them the mandate. You also get approval from your board and shareholders, if you have any, that you want to list. Like I mentioned also, the requirement is that you're a PLC. You get your FAs to do your documentation. Obviously require approval from SEC and from the Nigerian Stock Exchange to be listed. Completion board meeting with all the parties, so your broker, your issuing house, solicitors, all the parties would sign. You distribute if it's an IPO, and you do your marketing, do some roadshows, deal roadshows. You do your allotment. Obviously, you get SEC approval for that allotment. Get the undertaking. We would get used to sign your undertaking that you would comply with all our post-listing obligations and requirements, and then you'd be listed.